Hey everybody, welcome back. Metrology Podcast once again. Ryan Egbert hosting with Henry, and we have Heather Wade on the podcast today. The big guests just keep on coming. It's gonna be hard to top this season. So let me tell you a little bit about Heather. Heather Wade is an ASQ CCT, ASQ CQA, and is a recognized metrology subject matter expert and internationally sought presenter. She excels in presenting useful and easy to implement practices. She's also an editor of the ASQ Metrology Handbook 3rd edition. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. She's an ASQ Measurement Quality Division's Intermediate Past Chair, a graduate of the University of Michigan with a BS in biology. And Heather has worked as a microbiologist, filter test specialist, laboratory compliance officer, extraction chemist, and analytical chemist before moving full-time into metrology. And we're so glad to have her in our world now. She brings all of her nearly 30 years of professional experience together to provide pain relief for measurement headaches for her consulting clients. Find her on LinkedIn or at www.heatherwadegroup.com. Again, so thankful that we could lock Heather down. She's busy. She's on the road a lot like I am. So for us to get together for this podcast with Henry is an achievement in itself. So without further ado, on to the podcast with Heather. Thanks for listening. Well, Heather Wade, welcome to the Metrology Today podcast. The editor, I'm holding up the ASQ Metrology Handbook, 3rd edition. There's Henry's. Did I get you to sign mine, Heather? Oh, yeah, you did sign mine. I got to get Henry to sign it too.
Yeah, you do.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Heather. You're one of those that I'm just fortunate that we were able to line up schedules because I know you're very, very busy out there.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, Ryan. Thank you.
So,
and where are you coming from today, Heather?
Oh yeah, live from where?
Live from Hell, Michigan.
Live from
Michigan.
Hell.
You can go from hell to paradise in one day.
And it is a little bit, you said it's snowing there today, where it's beautiful out here in Utah.
Oh, yeah, it's finally getting a little bit of winter, or a couple days of winter this year. And Michigan, because we're in Michigan, we have our map with us wherever we go. So Hell, Michigan is right down here.
You know what's funny is I did a school report on Michigan way back. So I did quite a bit of research on Michigan at one point.
So it's a great state. I love it.
It is. It is. Well, Heather, I always like to start out the show on how did you find yourself in the world of obviously metrology as well as quality. Like it's not normally, or it's not a normal thing, right? It's not something people grow up saying, hey, I want to really be a metrologist or involved in quality assurance out there. So how did you get involved?
Well, first, we do need more people that have that drive and have that passion, and to at least know that this is a viable career path and a rewarding career path as that too. There's so many opportunities. Well, my degree is in biology from University of Michigan, and I should have known through all of my lab work and like in my organic chemistry class in the labs, I was writing down the temperature. I was writing down whether it was sunny or not. And the professor says, you don't need to write that down. I said, how do we know it's not important unless we track it and see what it does and if it does affect it? So I think I knew I was a metrologist before I knew I was a metrologist. And I worked in a variety of test labs as a microbiologist, as an extraction and analytical chemist, as a filter test specialist as well. So I had different types of testing experience, and understood somewhat about accuracy and measurement, but had no idea what uncertainty was, and was working in a program office working with customers who were getting their products certified. And an opening came up in the company for a laboratory calibration officer. And I just happened to look at the job posting, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is me. It's looking at understanding the equipment, making sure it's accurate for the use in the chemistry, microbiology, and engineering test labs. I spoke all the languages and was pretty much a shoo-in for that job. And it has been a perfect fit And it's like when you wake up every morning and you enjoy what you do and you're excited to do more and excited to learn more and learn from others and share knowledge and have some challenging conversations, it's really been a rewarding career. The people that I've met and continue to meet has been wonderful. So I was able to apply all those different aspects to manage all of the test equipment for those labs, those different labs. So I had quite an experience of all the different measurement parameters possible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of almost like it always finds you, metrology kind of picks you.
Yeah.
So and Henry, I should bring you in. Welcome as always.
Glad to be here. Glad to be on with Heather, the author of the Metrology Handbook. And I have
I-
some, let's start with that, Ryan, if I
Yeah,
can.
well, I was going to say, Henry, I do appreciate the behind the scenes. Henry has put a lot of work into a lot of the lineup for this season. So, Henry, fantastic job. I really appreciate you helping out with that stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to have such great contacts and great people. So Heather,
So,
I had some questions for you. We talk on occasion. This one, so my first question was, did writing the Metrology Handbook take 1 week or two?
Well, you mean years? It was 2 years.
No, weeks. I don't have that. I'm going to have to mark you down for 2 weeks because I only have one or two.
Okay.
well, Henry, you're right. We should start with that. So it's the third edition. So did this come up organically? Is this something that was like a project you had interest in, or did you get asked to do it? How did it come up, Heather?
It was all of those. I was a contributing author on the second edition with Jay Booker, and Jay Booker, one of my beloved mentors, really helped me in my metrology career and path, in launching me into positions that I didn't know I was ready for yet. But next thing I know, I'm chair of the ASQ Measurement Quality Division, chair of the Certified Calibration Technician Exam Subcommittee. And some of those were by Jay. He's like, "Yeah, why don't you become chair?" And I'm like, "I got to think about it." "Hey, welcome, you're chair now." I said I was going to think about it, but I guess I've been voluntold. But those were rewarding, a lot of learning experiences, and have a wonderful group of people around me to help support me and make sure that I'm successful, like Dilip Shah. So Jay unfortunately passed away in 2014, 2 years after the second edition was published. So in 2022, well, before 2022, the book needed updating because it had been 10 years since its publishing and a lot of things had changed. The whole
Sure.
SI had been redefined. The 2017 version of 17025 came out, the new SI brochure, updates in 9001. A lot of things had changed,
Just a
as well
couple
as
small things,
just
SI
one or
units,
two.
17025.
Yeah, just
Just small details.
details, schmeetails. And uh, with that, Jay wasn't around to lead it anymore, and ASQ Quality Press, the publisher, was trying to find somebody to pick up that torch because it was a lot of work. And I thought, why not? And it was definitely a challenge. And I have a great group of people who like Henry and Walter Noason, who you just had on, who are contributing authors to the handbook. And so it wouldn't have been possible without their contributions. So there's Jane Weitzel, Dilip Shah, Tony Hamilton,
Yep.
Walter Noason, Pam Wright, Paul Keep. So there's a whole
Georgia
bunch of people.
Harris.
Georgia Harris, this, of course,
Mhm.
Georgia Harris
And I
contributed a lot, and
and I
another
joke,
mentor.
of
Mhm.
course, about, the small things or whatever. But I mean, on that podcast with Walter, I mean, speaking about like software validation and things that are like those things that you just don't think about really have changed a lot in 10 years.
Mhm.
That's a long time in technology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the painstaking process. So you find out, okay, I'm going to be doing this. So where do you even start? And obviously, you don't have to go into so much detail that you're uncomfortable with it. But like, what are some of the challenges that you face right away? Just finding people obviously is a big first step, I would think.
Hmm. Identifying what needs to be updated. So, of course, anything related to 17025, 2005 version, any of the standards that are mentioned in there, what's been updated, the whole SI units, what chapters, what's the current content, what needs to be updated, what needs to be scrapped, rewritten, what new chapters can we add, what isn't in there that we do need in there to give people the resources so that they can run a calibration lab, whether it's commercial or a captive internal lab.
Right. And unfortunately, that happens. Like, there's a lot of people out there that I encounter that I say they're on an island. You know, they need resources. And so
Mm-hmm.
ever since there's been quite a few, like, I'm not asking for anything. No, I'm just joking. But it's seriously, some sales come from us because we're like, hey, you're looking for stuff. This is something that you can get and have a
Yeah.
hard copy reference of. You know, I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
valuable for people out there, like you're saying, you know, that need something a little bit helpful that isn't a bunch of Google searches and you're kind of questioning, you know, where am I getting this information from? Or, you know, the other alternative that we're all familiar with, you know, some people don't need the extreme of a consultant or something like that. You know, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they just need a solid resource.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back to and check on, as well as something that I really appreciated about Jay's writing was for it to be in an easy to understand way. It's written for like at a conversational level, at a level that everybody hopefully can understand. And if not, it's just something that sometimes you just need more exposure and more practice to then get the concepts to click.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Henry, so you were obviously one contacted. So do you
Mhm.
I wanted to ask on your end, so when you get approached for something of that magnitude, but what was your feelings of it as well? Especially, of course, coming from Heather, that softens the blow a little
That
bit,
makes
right?
it a lot easier. Yeah. Like I can trust, you can trust Heather, but you get a lot of legal, the fun part of it, a lot of legal disclaimers. ASQ owns anything you write. A lot of that stuff comes from it. And then it's a time crunch because I first started with Force and then Heather, there was a time crunch for ASQ to get this done. And then it became decision rules, which I was more than happy to do. Dilip helped me quite a bit. Dilip and I sat down and really wrote the decision rules together. And then we were trying to brush off measurement uncertainty, but the pinch for time got too much. So we did make a few tweaks to that, I would say, right, Heather? That was
Mhm.
pretty fair,
Mhm.
like
Y-
an overall edit to that chapter
Yeah.
from volume two to give it like I spruced it up a little bit.
Oh,
It wasn't a full, it was a repainting the cabinets. It wasn't a full kitchen remodel, if we
yeah.
had to say
It's
that
and
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah, and it's
way.
so much better. And I also want to just commend you to Henry that your your generosity in sharing your knowledge, sharing the Morehouse's knowledge on your website, the spreadsheets that you have and the tools that you have available for free, that your passion to make measurements better for everybody. And
Yep.
the one thing I really enjoy in the metrology world is even though there are competitors, businesses that are competing, we all seem to work together because we all have a common goal. There's plenty of work to go around. And
Yes.
how can we help each other be better? And so I just really want to commend you, Henry, on your
Oh, thank
passion
you.
and the quality of what you share and the usability of it too. So not only with the contributions to the handbook, which have been spectacular and immense, have improved it immensely, just your general sharing and passion for helping people too.
Well, thanks. It's, why you wake up and do things. The decision rule document that we have coming out that you have a copy of is gonna we were joking about how that made anger a few because we don't understand how people keep this stuff under lock and key. Like, oh, you're going to use
Yeah.
me. Heather's a consultant, right? You're going to use
Mhm.
me as a consultant, but I'm only going to give my bag of tricks out if you give me 10 grand and then you get access to all of them.
Mhm.
Where the whole premise of this is let's just help people. Let's teach people how to fish,
Mhm.
right? We don't, none of us want to start from day one.
Mhm.
Heather, you get these, and I forwarded some of and I get them a lot too. Uh, can you help me with uncertainty, or can you help me with something else? And you say, yeah.
Mhm.
And the next thing that comes after it, right, is I have an audit in 2 weeks. I need to get my stuff together. And you want to just, on the one hand, you're like, how is this even possible? You can't, you're planning. You're like, it doesn't work that way. I think what we all want to do is teach people how to do it themselves so then they
Mhm.
can teach the more people in the next generation. It's not,
Mhm.
hey, just pay me to do your uncertainty budgets.
Oh yeah.
No one wants to. I'm very few people want to do that in this world. Like it just, right? I mean,
Mhm.
how many Dilip doesn't want to do it? Great.
Mhm.
Almost everybody I know, that's the last thing they want to do right now
Mhm.
is go in and do somebody's uncertainty budgets for them.
Mhm.
But everybody's more than willing to help people with it,
Mhm.
right? It's just the
Yep.
doing. So
Yep.
it's like, hey, we have all this material, go read it. There's a book, I forget the name of it, but it talks about selling pools. He said the best clients ever were the ones that did all the research before they were to buy the pool, because then they came and that's really what
Mhm.
we want to get to with a lot of metrology and sharing all this stuff is
Mhm.
get 90% of the way there, get 80% of the way there, and then hire somebody like Heather to come in and get you the additional 20% to
Mhm.
get you to the 100% that you need to be.
Mhm. Yep.
Well, and
So, but
Yeah.
Heather's out there seeing. I always say people in the auditing circles, they sometimes see the worst of it too.
Heather,
We see.
Heather
Yeah.
sees the you have the stories, right? You have the 2 week stories, or what's the worst crunch? Did you get it tomorrow? My audit's tomorrow, and I need help.
Oh, last week. We already had it. Our responses are
We're already
due
done.
next week. We already had it, and we've got these deficiencies that we have to respond to next week. And it's like, oh, wow. Let's look at what the options are because what you're looking for isn't humanly possible. Or if it is, we want to make sure we're not just slapping a band-aid on it. We want it to be an appropriate fix. And if you're just looking for a band-aid, that's not going to do any of us any good.
Have you had the ones where write me a proposal? It's I need this due next week, but we're also shopping all available people. Can you write me a proposal and submit it?
Mhm.
Oh
It's
man.
like so now you're in a time crunch for a week and you're gonna write a proposal, then you're gonna take it to the team and say this person that's gonna take taste.
Now, Heather,
Uh,
if we could take a quick step back. Now, quite a bit of our listenership are brand new. Like, uh, we're now over 2,000 technicians trained. So
Nice.
these
Nice.
these guys are very new, and a lot of them are out there in labs that they don't understand the workings of all the systems, right?
Mm.
So
Mhm.
ASQ is a key thing, and quality is key
Mhm.
to calibration,
Mhm.
right? And from military systems, I think it's safe to say a lot of people come from our systems. They view QA as adversaries, right?
Mhm.
They're coming from that realm where these people are coming in to wreck our stuff and whatever. I found
Mhm.
as you move to the civilian side, it's really for the good of the measurement industry that we
Mhm.
have things like accreditation, right? So do you mind
Mhm.
talking a little bit about ASQ, the things, the areas that maybe more specific that are orbiting around the metrology areas and the
Sure.
important things, and maybe one of their QA manager might be, have a special certification. What are
Mhm.
those, and those things,
Yeah.
what do they mean to them?
Mhm.
Do you mind chatting about those a little bit?
Sure. Be happy to. ASQ is a US-based organization. It's a nonprofit work. Its focus is improving quality education about quality practices. And in it, the membership is based on geography as well as your areas of interest. So, depending on where you live, there's a local section meeting, And the people that attend the section meeting are from all different walks of life and may have different technical interests. And then there are technical specialty areas like measurement quality for calibration, for metrology, for test labs. And then there's other technical divisions like software, statistics, pharmaceutical, operational management, and so there's an auditing. So there's a lot of crossover and sharing of key basic functions and quality tools amongst those different technical divisions. And so with ASQ membership, you get access to all of the divisions. All of the technical divisions are part of the membership, as well as your local section that you can choose which section you want to be a part of. Some people will join a section that might be in a different state and just attend the meetings remotely. Is that
Heather,
that
on
definitely? Mhm.
yeah, on that one, I think there's three, right? You can have a primary and two secondary. You can actually be part of three sections. Is that the case?
I think you can add sections that you want to,
Yeah,
or you
I,
could
I don't
transfer. Yeah,
I don't know if it's definitely two. I think it's three
I think
that
it's
you can.
I think
I
you can
think
go up to that. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know at least the local your local one. I think I'm in two. So yeah, but I've been a member for a while. And so anybody that is a member already of ASQ, if you haven't upgraded to a senior membership, do that. There's no additional cost. It's just
Oh,
changing what level you are. And that does get you additional benefits like extra sections. And the measurement quality division was established in 1991. And it was spun off from the inspection division because they realized there was more in the measurement science that was needed beyond what the inspection division could support. And in 1993 was the first ASQ certified calibration technician exam. And the body of knowledge for the CCT, while the title of the exam is technician, certified calibration technician, I personally would love to see it upgraded to technologist
hmm.
because a lot of people in management level think, oh, that's a bench level technician. But
Hmm.
the body of knowledge is beyond the bench. It includes the quality systems, it includes management, includes statistics and uncertainty, and as well as bench level equipment management of all of the parameters. And I found just studying for it, I learned so much in the
Yes.
tools. And the exam is open book. And that's another reason that the metrology handbook was updated is that this is seen as an all-in-one reference, although I have the background on, so I'll try to hold it in front of me.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do
Henry and I got your
it.
back.
There you go. Got my back and the book. Um, so the certified calibration technician exam is the ASQ metrology handbook is used a lot for writing the ASQ CCT exam and updating it. And the body of knowledge for all the ASQ certification exams are updated every 5 years. And
Okay.
that's to make sure that the knowledge that's being tested is current, is appropriate. So whether you're searching for the certified calibration technician exam, the certified quality auditor, the any of the ASQ certifications, which ASQ certifications have been really well regarded worldwide. Because I went to China about 10 years ago and they were interested, how do we do the ASQ certification
Hmm.
exams over here? So they can be done worldwide. And they're electronic based, so you go to a testing center and you can take it's open book, so you can take in your materials. And for a lot of folks, they just have to take in the handbook because it's got everything in there. Is
I
what how
wish
we've
I
tried to write it.
Yeah, I took
Let's.
it. So
Yeah.
I had my CCT. I haven't renewed it, but
Mhm,
I wish I would have had something like that because you're right. Like I had the primer and stuff, but yeah, I
mhm,
didn't feel it was as applicable.
mhm,
But sorry, Henry, I just one quick comment
No, go
on
ahead.
the
Well,
breadth of ASQ that really hit me is as CCT, you do continuing education,
mhm,
and a lot of times you do that in section and you go and see different places. And there's not here
mhm,
in Salt Lake a lot of calibration labs or entities that we could go to, but we went to a lot of like supply chain and just a whole bunch of different areas, and it was
Mm,
really eye-opening, all
mhm.
the different places that are touched by quality and ASQ. So I just wanted to mention that, like, it's everywhere. Like it's a
Yeah,
part of all different industries, all different go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry, Henry. Go ahead.
No, for those that are listening, though, this is a good conversation. So even though it's open books, people might be listening saying, "Oh, that's simple," but your time. So you have to know where it is in the book. And
mhm,
if you know the answers, it's going to be quicker for you to get through to the next one where
mhm,
you have to actually use the book.
mhm,
Maybe you don't know all your prefixes and
mhm.
they're right. And then you use the book, you can look them up, you can figure them
Oh
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
They've added some. I don't know the one. I forget the ones they added, like Yocto, or Heather
Oh,
probably knows off the top of her head. But yeah,
lots,
numbers that are that large.
Well, yeah,
lots of, and not so lots of.
the timing aspect, Henry, you are not lying. That was actually motivation to how for the sign certification we do a time limit as well, and it was because of that. Because if in that 4 hour period or whatever, if you're doing the CCT, if you're trying to look up every question, you will not finish.
You
Mm-mm.
can't, and you won't.
You have to know a certain percentage if because otherwise you're out of time.
Hmm.
Yeah, or where
Yeah,
to find it quickly. Like
Right.
yeah,
if they questions about speed of light in a vacuum, right? That was
yeah.
one of them I remember on. Yeah, but the other thing is to be CCC certified, the criteria. We had that. We did a you asked, you answer webinar, and somebody actually asked that, right? And Heather, that's another thing. A new technician coming in can't just come take the CCT exam.
Mm-mm.
So there's qualifications that need to be had. You want to
Mm-hmm.
let them know about that?
Yeah, and those off the top of my head, I'm a little fuzzy because it's been a while since I've taken it. And I had to step down from the certification board when I edited the handbook and wrote parts of the handbook because that would have been a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And there is, I believe, a minimum of 5 years, but you get
Yep.
credit. Like if you have a degree, even if it's an associate's degree, you get 2 years credit. So they want you to be in the field for a number of years, like 3 years before you try to take the exam. Because if you come in and you don't know anything,
It's a
the
waste of
you
time.
it's yeah, it'll be a learning experience because at the end of the exam, you know right away whether you passed. And if you didn't pass, it lets you know the areas you need to work on. Like these were the areas that you missed the questions. And having been on the certification board and seen the rigor in how the questions are written, and then a new group of people come in to then evaluate the questions and refine them, and then another group of people come in to test those questions. Like are in for each question, are there answers that could be confusing that one of them you might think one is better than the other? And so it's written so that there's no trick questions. The answer is the answer is the answer. However, it also depends on the knowledge of the test taker and their understanding because there are some questions that ASQ, based on the statistics, they know whether if somebody got this question wrong here, they know it was because they're somebody new and they don't understand that nuance yet.
Mhm.
And so the statistics behind the exams, they have full-time psychometricians on
Hmm.
staff that go through all these exams, and it's really fascinating for the rigor of the exams to
Until
make
I
sure
was
that, yeah.
until we were piecing together a certification, I didn't know what a psychometrician was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, now this has happened before, Heather, where I've had people that are really interested in quality. So let's just ask publicly. So what's a good way to start? If somebody's like, hey, I'm in calibration world, or even some people coming out of
Yeah.
the military systems and are like, I want to angle towards being in the quality side. I want to do maybe assessing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the next thing I want to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what paths? What would you
Mm-hmm.
recommend to somebody? How would they get started?
And while being a an ASQ member and member leader for a number of years, and this is all volunteer too. You have to be pretty passionate to keep doing it and encourage people. ASQ is a really good organization because it gets you introduced to so many different areas. And with the membership, there's free tools every month that you get in your membership. And the networking, whether if it's at ASQ divisions, conferences, ASQ Measurement Quality Division is having a conference this fall on September 17th through 20th back in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. And we've added 2 days of tutorials in addition to the 2 days of conference. And then there's other conferences like Measurement Science Conference, which is in Anaheim or Southern California area every spring. There's NCSL International, which is also a really valuable organization, and they have the summer conference, and then they have a technical exchange in the wintertime. The technical exchange is geared towards beginning level technicians and just tutorials. There's no conference papers presented, it's just tutorials. So it's really the networking at these events which are key. So there's those conferences. If there's a particular area, in addition to something that you're interested in, maybe somebody is really interested in software, they can join the ASQ software division and see how that's related, the statistics division. As an assessor and also doing internal auditing, I have my certified quality auditor certification and go to and present at the ASQ audit conference. So
Was
there's
that that was by MSC a couple of years ago? There was one that was across the way
yeah.
from MSC
Oh, that
like a
was
year or two ago.
World Conference. That was ASQ's World Conference. So it's all of the technical divisions. It's open to the global membership. So people from all over the world come to it, thousands of
Wow.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, that was at the big convention center, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a side question. What do you think
Yeah.
about some of these, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but some of the conferences, like I noticed when ITS 90 and MSC were together,
Oh yeah.
that was a really good combo. Like, what do you think about combo conferences? Like, I understand everybody has reasons why they want to have their own conference, but
Mhm.
what are your opinions on that if you dare to give?
In my opinion, I think they're great because it broadens the knowledge base that's being shared, and you get to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise. And maybe it's a field that you might have interest in, or even just a contact, a good person to be in contact with for networking. And really in these meetings, it's the networking is always the best part. It's the stuff that happens outside the sessions. It's the talking over drinks or over food or just at the table, and to be able to say, I'm struggling with this. And you have a scenario and you're getting feedback from people of like, well, could you do this? Could you do this or try this? That people are so excited to share information. It's kind of some free consulting that you can get that information, those pain reliefs.
Exactly. Well, and the way like sometimes I'll have students like, well, networking, what does that mean? Just manager to manager? No, the people that when you're asking me questions and I go and find people, you can ask
Mhm.
those people yourselves, right? Because
Mhm.
you'll start to expand that network into the experts that are out there.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
sometimes that's the hardest part in this industry is knowing who to call when
Mhm.
you don't know the right answer, especially if you're on one of those
Yeah.
islands, right?
Yeah. Another area that I wanted to mention that I'm also parting take part in is ASTM's standards committees. And it's another volunteer gig, but you get
You're
to have
brave.
a voice. I know. If you knew of all of the volunteer stuff.
Oh man.
It's
um,
everywhere,
it's everywhere.
and everybody
And
wants everybody to do it. So
yeah, but ASTM, you have a voice in reading these standards as they're being updated. And one reason I got involved is bringing some metrology sanity to some of the standards. And
Thank
ASTM,
you. Thank you from
yeah,
all of us.
yeah,
they're not
like
all there yet. But
they're not all there yet, and um, it's a slow progress. And some of it is just going to be we've got to pick the battles and work on some things. But for example, ASTM, I joined the cannabis standards. So with those, a lot of people that are on those committees have um, have good intentions, but the metrology behind it may not be there. That, okay, if you want to have humidity control to plus or minus 5% relative humidity, okay, you're going to need a really expensive
Mhm.
um, thermohygrometer to measure that, because you're probably only going to get plus or minus 3% relative humidity accuracy in that, or maybe that's even the uncertainty for those devices. So what's realistic, what's needed? And there was one where for the transport of cannabis from the processor to the dispensary, they wanted the trucks to be temperature and humidity controlled, and the stuff's already packaged. I'm like, if
Yeah,
it's already
why?
packaged, why
Mm,
do you need plus or minus 5% relative humidity in a truck that's going to be in all
yeah.
environments
Yeah. On the road.
on the
Yeah.
road? Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I've been proud of because we teach ASTM like not like we don't go step by step through the standard, but we'll let
Mhm.
everyone know, as we're teaching things, this is the ASTM standard, this is ISO standard, this is the
Mhm.
IEC standard. We make sure we cover all those bases because
Yeah,
I don't know
great.
if you've seen
Great.
as much as we have is there's a lot of places use an IEC now in European standards just because of their client base or
Mhm.
maybe they're headquartered out of France or something like that, right? So they
Mhm.
have to stick to, somewhat that more metric um side of the house. But
Mhm.
you're obviously a lead assessor, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
So a lot of people as young technicians, they view that process as very cryptic, right?
Mm.
Um, what is your advice to someone new to calibration as an auditor comes in? What are some of the things
Mm.
you're looking at? I always tell them, don't be nervous. They're there to help your lab. This
Mhm.
isn't similar to what we had in the military where they're like witch hunting sometimes, like
Right. Yeah.
so what do you have any thoughts on that?
Mhm. Having been on the receiving end of assessor audits for 25 years, I understand the stress of it and recognize that. And I've also had my fair share of excellent assessors that I knew and felt were really there to help us, and then some really, really bad ones that I never wanted to see again, and understood I never wanted to be like that. And so with new technicians, assuring them that this is open book. You don't have to try to remember anything, because oftentimes you're already frightened and your mind is going to go blank. So do you know where to find what it is you need to look up? And it's also phone a friend. So you can ask a manager, you can ask a coworker, hey, where do I find this again? Because you're nervous. So we're not going to write a deficiency because you're nervous. It's not fair. Um, and then I add in a little bit of humor. I said, if your words fail you, I do accept interpretive dance. And usually they get to laugh, and people start to feel a little bit more relaxed, and say, I'll remind them that, hey, you're the expert in this measurement. So imagine you're going to train me how to do it. So take me through and show me. And if there's any questions that I ask that aren't clear, feel free to ask for clarification. And sometimes I'll tell some puns just to lighten the mood as well. And I do warn them that my jokes are full grown. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, there was
We got to
there's
get to
one.
the jokes. We got to
Yeah,
I
keep
Henry
going.
did
do,
You
and
did
know,
we
say
haven't
that.
had any.
yeah,
So I
we haven't had
one
any.
that one that I start with, and I say, so it's interesting. My last name is Wade. That's not what's interesting, but it's interesting because I work in the world of calibration. I will always be Miss Wade. But
See, I have a on my recording station when I go mobile, I have a padoonch
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then applause. Insert there. I'll insert them in editing.
Perfect.
Put them
Perfect.
in.
Yeah.
Tell some more because the amazing Heather's amazing ability here, for those that haven't been around her, is she can go and go and go, and she doesn't. She probably do a full hour, but she's not going to do a full hour in this podcast. But why don't you do some for us, Heather?
That's for like a Friday night episode. We should do a
It's
Friday
like
night Heather's joke night or something.
Heather joke night.
Adults only.
It's like, lift the
No,
needle, lift the needle. Can we talk about something else? Lift the needle. Stop telling jokes. Because pun is really short for punishment.
Yeah, it is. Unless it's really creative.
Yeah,
that's
So
that's
so
may
much.
so as a tech
What are some of your favorites?
some of my favorites. Did you know that if you're afraid of elevators, you can take steps to avoid them?
oh
And then
man.
my fear of moving stairways is escalating. The other night I went to the grocery store and I meant to pick up a 6-pack of Sprite. And then when I got home, I realized I picked 7 Up. Oh, did I tell you about the time that I lost my job for giving up my seat
No.
to a blind person at that? Yeah, that's how I lost my job as a bus driver. Let's not lose any listeners.
And not
No,
lose
this
anyone.
is
That reminded
great.
me of one that you remember that time? Like, what's the one joke that I always liked? Oh, I used to be a lifeguard. And someone says, oh, yeah, 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 the damn purple kid got me fired. What
Oh no.
happened? The damn purple kid got me fired.
Oh,
I was waving back at them. Hey, hi,
Get out of the
hi.
water. Get out of the water.
Then they were playing hide and go seek.
Thought they were just hiding. Yeah, no, we were going the ASTM committee. So back on
yeah,
Ryan,
circle it
Ryan
right back
out
around.
right out of that. That can be and audits and everything else. No, going back to the audit part of it. I think sometimes people are weird because they haven't been through it.
Mhm,
It's always going to be strange, like the first time you go through an audit and you're a
mhm,
new tech. I think there's always going to be some people there like, oh, someone's going to watch me and management's going to be upset. And even though you can do your best to reassure the people via management to say, hey, this is a learning opportunity. If
mhm,
something's found, who cares? We'll
mhm,
fix it. It's fine.
mhm.
Right. But then what I've certainly found is sometimes people just get nervous, like if somebody else
Oh
is
yeah.
around asking them questions. So
Oh
it
yeah.
is nice. It is nice when the person comes in and just alleviates all that and says, look, I'm here to help.
Mhm,
Right. I'm here to observe you. You credited, but I'm also here to help. Like we've had
mhm,
great auditors, Harry Moody, who's no longer with us, was
mhm,
just such
mhm.
a, he came in and he had me nervous a bit. I knew some of his stuff that he was going to ask, obviously, and
Yeah.
had the test, and but boy, that guy, he would just thumb through things, and he'd ask me a question, and I'd say, let me go. It's on page 36. He was after he just thumbed through something, right? So he had a what photographic memory, really. I think so in his, and he just would find stuff, but just great guy, was
Mhm,
more than willing to help. We had some stuff with our Agilents. He was like, hey, are you doing this? And we're like, no, should we be? And he was quick to say, yeah, you should, and it
mhm,
may make a difference. And then
mhm,
he let us, instead of writing the audit up, that because we weren't doing the proper maintenance, he said, I'll tell you what, you show me. I'll let you do all the testing with and without. After we cleaned the filters, we did a bunch of measurements before we cleaned the filters and a bunch after, and we found that it was
mhm,
the error was somewhere at the seventh or sixth decimal. Like
mhm,
like it was going to impact the sixth decimal place, and we're only measuring to the fifth. So he's like,
mhm,
yeah, you're good, but you should have this as a
mhm.
PM, and that was
Nice.
probably what 15. And now we have it as a PM. It's great. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't have to worry about it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Things you don't know because a lot of people use equipment
Yes.
and they have no idea. I mean, because he was asking, hey, how often do you check the internal temperature of your 3458? And I was like, never.
Mhm.
And that's when the filter thing came up. And
Mm.
now we check it,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, we're doing force measurements, so we hopefully we know all the stuff about force. But on the electronic side, sometimes you just don't know that equipment as well as some of the other people, and people can
Mhm.
help with it. It's
Mhm.
not like there's a class, right, on how to use. Well, maybe there is, but I haven't seen it. On, hey, everything you need to know about the 3458, right?
Yeah.
Everything you need to know about doing a uncertainty budget for a multimeter. I mean, that was another one. I, I think I know my way around somewhat uncertainty, but I had to go to two other people and say, hey, I just did this budget for
Mhm.
this Fluke 8588, and
Mhm.
I'm not 100% sure. And somebody said, oh yeah, their absolute uncertainty includes the calibration as well. And I'm like,
Mm,
but if you have to dig and read to find all this
mm-hmm.
stuff. So you really have to be a sleuth sometimes. There's not, pe
Yes.
people haven't developed these one-page cheat sheets that we probably should have. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in all
That'd be
honesty,
nice.
like
Yeah.
manufacturers saying this is if you're, preparing a measurement uncertainty budget here, these are the things that you really want to look at, or a nice little section on that
Yeah.
instead of being pampered or peppered in throughout the manual because it's hard to
Yeah.
find some of that stuff.
Yeah. And that makes me think of a book that you shared with me, Henry, the Checklist Manifesto.
I love that book. Anybody
Thank
that's
you.
listening, anybody
Yeah,
yeah, that should be part of all quality systems because I
that was
say
great.
that numerous times. No
Yeah.
one wants to reread procedures. It's a waste of everybody's time. You read
Hmm.
it, you understand it, and then you have a checklist to go back on the pieces that you might not understand until you
Yeah.
grasp the concept.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that was great. And I've been using them with my consulting clients, and it's been so much easier. And even the checklists are living documents because you
yep.
create it, you use it, then you find out, oh, we need to add this, we need to take this out, we need to supplement this, we need to clarify this. And so it's also a living document. And the thing, as an assessor, we are looking for conformance.
Mm.
We are expecting conformance. And so we're watching something and like, yep, they're doing it how they're supposed to, doing it how they're supposed to, they're following their procedures, they're following and meeting the requirements. Great. It's when we find something in the objective evidence that doesn't appear to meet the requirements that we say, hey, can you show what else can you show me? Or you see one calibration technician performing a calibration and maybe they skip a step in a procedure. And so you ask for another calibration tech and you have the calibration tech do the same thing. And are they both missing that part? Is it a matter of they're just nervous from this? Or is this something that, do they realize that they're missing it? And is it critical? Do they need to update the procedure? If they're not following the procedure for some reason, what needs to be updated? Do you need to refine the procedure or refine the process so that you do that step? But we're not going in, there's zero accreditation bodies that say you have to have this many deficiencies when you leave at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Um, Last week I had pardon me, I had an assessment, zero deficiencies. Yay! Because it's kind of like police officers, like we don't want to do the paperwork. When there's a
Right.
deficiency,
Sure.
we've got reports to write for it, and then a lot of times we end up having to review the responses to it. So we're going to write something if it's there, but it's not, we don't get joy out of it.
I think
Right.
you could walk into any lab and rate a deficiency for anything, any day, if you really wanted to. There was a guy I knew that he would go in and he didn't last too long, but he lasted way too long for the
Mm.
organization. He would go in and his goal was to rate at least 30.
Oh,
Well, I was going to
I
ask,
think he's no longer with us. I mean, he's a semi good guy, but some people do not like him and this because of that. And
mm.
there were other people that like walk into the audit and they were Ted Dorian said he was thrown out somewhere. He's got to come on at some point, Ron.
Oh,
that'd be
totally.
amazing.
Oh, he would be great.
Are you kidding me?
He is he is wonderful.
I am a huge fan from afar. I was going to
I was like,
ask
who would
Heather,
throw him out? I'm like, I'd welcome
where in
him with
your
no.
assessor training, though, do you get the magic fingers that out of 100 documents, you pick the one that isn't right or
That
isn't
seems to be
signed or isn't,
it.
the only one
Oh
out of a
man.
thousand papers, you could just pick them out very easily?
Somehow we develop that sense. It's not anything that is necessarily specifically trained. And I used to wonder that too. The assessor would come in and be like, show me this record. And you show that to them and they're like, okay, it has all of these issues with it. Is this, can you show me another record? And it's like, okay, this issue is there again. How do they find that? And it's a superpower of assessors, but it also comes
And it's
from
spooky. It's a little
it's
spooky.
spooky, but it also comes from we have that outside set of eyes. So we can see things where the people using these every day have filled it in their mind that the phrase you can't see the forest for the trees, that like how did they see that? And sometimes Like, oh, I hope they don't pull this. I hope they don't pull. Oh, they just pulled that. And and but yeah, there's a sense that assessors have that they can find things that like really that one, you're pulling that one. And yeah.
Yes. Now,
Organizations have this. And I was going to say, I think almost everybody in this, Heather, you go in much more than I see, but contract review is still weak.
Mhm,
Almost any organization I see, it's weak. I mean, you can, and from us, just I can tell you from the purchase orders we get of all these accredited labs, those purchase orders could all almost, what, 50% of them at least could probably be written up on a deficiency because they don't do or state things that
mhm,
they need to state. One of the
mhm,
most common ones we used to see was the request for Z540.3, and they wouldn't tell us what they wanted their calibration interval to be because that's a requirement in Z540.3, I believe. I haven't read it in a while, but I believe it's one of those requirements is the
mhm,
customer shall tell you what the calibration interval of their equipment shall be.
mhm, mhm.
So they'd say Z540.3, and we'd be calling, well, what do you want it to be? It should be on the PO, never on the PO, never.
Yeah.
So,
And
these things. It's just how deep do you want to go? Like, are
mhm,
you addressing competency and on the contract review? I love
mhm,
UCAS LAB 48, but I've still yet to see a PO that says, hey, for acceptance criteria, guard band by the expanded measurement uncertainty
mhm,
per ILAC as calculated per ILAC P14, and fail if PFA is greater than 5%, right?
mhm,
Otherwise pass. I've yet
mhm,
to see that language in a on a PO, and it's
mhm.
fantastic language because it tells you exactly what to do. Okay, PFA
Yeah.
higher than 5%, I'm failing.
Yeah.
if you
Customer has
see
evaluated their risk,
Yeah.
right?
it,
They know
it
exactly what the risk is, they want it to be, and anything more than that,
Yeah.
they're you got to fail and adjust. So
yeah, if they do ask that or use that language, you're gonna think they need an exorcism and that they're speaking in tongues because
I'm gonna fall
no
over.
one out there knows that language.
I've asked people to show it to me, like produce a real purchase order that you've received, and if you can share that has this language.
Yeah. Maybe I should update I have a template because one of those things that I learned was, hey, if I'm creating this request letter over and over, let's make it a template and then
Hmm.
plug and chug. And that's something I share with when I give presentations on how to request calibration services.
Hmm.
Here's the things that are needed because whether you're the customer or the lab, you're both frustrated with, here, calibrate this. And the customer just needs the sticker and the cert, and the lab's like, well, we want to calibrate it, but what do you need calibrated? How do you use it? What
Yep.
what do you need it to? And unfortunately, sometimes the companies, the people that are filling out the PO, they don't understand this stuff. They're like, please calibrate this. And
Manufacturer
here's the
specs.
equipment. Yeah. And which is a little bit more sometimes than some labs even get. They just get the equipment and say, calibrate it.
Yeah, please
And
calibrate.
yeah,
Yeah.
Manufacturer specs. Well, what specs do you want? Because the spec sheet has about 30 different
yeah,
specifications on it.
Yeah.
What one do you know?
yeah. Which version? Do you want the
Yeah.
1 year? Do you want the 30-day? Do you want, yeah, the
Yep.
monthly?
Yeah, there's all that too. And then
Yeah,
there's ones that mean nothing that somebody just put it on for,
yeah.
type B analysis. That was one that I got into, Heather, that, I don't want to bore the crap out of everybody, but this is a fun topic, Ryan, that I've never talked to you about this, but why, as manufacturers, why do we use why have we defaulted to type B uncertainty, like divisor, rectangular distribution? If I'm a manufacturer and I know all this stuff about my instrument, why wouldn't I report that as normal data and say I've taken
Mm,
20,000 samples and this is all normal? If you have it all, otherwise you're penalizing somebody by saying, all right, you got to add about 13% overall. If you divide by 1.732 and then multiply that by two in the end for assuming you want to be at 95.45, you use the defective degrees of freedom and all that stuff. But let's just assume it's two. Um, you're going to pay the penalty of about 100. It's going to be 113%. But if the manufacturer knows that and has all that data, it's going to be normally distributed. It could be
mhm.
they have it.
I'm
I've
newer to the
always,
game. I've always wondered that. I just thought that people smarter than me figured that out.
I don't know. I think I don't think it's horrible practice because there's a lot of, and Heather sees this, right? We all see it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of uncertainty budgets that don't account for everything. So
Mhm.
overestimating a little bit here and there or doing things, it's
Mhm.
not the horrible part of it. But if you had everything right, if you had
Mhm.
all your information and everything that's gonna happen, uh, it is a penalty, and it's
Mhm.
kind of a dumb one.
Mhm.
Where we
Yeah,
are.
Yep.
yeah. Heather, I wanted to, because you're the perfect person to ask these questions too. So I want to go kind of full circle and somewhat
Yeah.
along the lines of what you said at the beginning of the episode, where sometimes you got put into positions you weren't sure you were ready for. I I found an interesting change even in our own school where, of course I expect to train the new people. That's what we're designed to do, brand new,
Mhm.
right? But now as time has gone on, managers, as they're looking for brighter horizons or people are looking to kind of go upward trajectory where maybe their lab doesn't have that for them, right? It's just, let's
Mm.
be honest about it.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, and I know there's a huge need, just speaking generally about all assessment accreditation bodies, assessors, there's a high need
Mhm.
for them.
Mhm.
How do some of these people know? Because I'll bring up assessing and be like, hey, what about being an assessor? And they'll be like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
I'm not ready for that. How does someone know, or what do you feel like are some of the other than a passion, right? I always say I
Mhm.
prefer auditors that care a lot about metrology, right? One
Mhm.
of us that are all passionate about it. What other things you think would maybe tell someone they're ready for it? They
Yeah.
don't have to know everything. Let's
Mm-mm.
clear that up. They don't have to know
Yeah.
everything.
Yep. Yeah. Every assessor has their technical strengths. And that's often seen when they assess, like I have a strength in uncertainty. So I'm often digging into the uncertainty budgets, or if I'm assessing a test lab, assessing the calibration aspect of it. And many of them are like, oh, good, because we've been needing a calibration assessor. And I wish we had you come here 20 years ago because now we know what we need to do. And now we're wondering what we did for the past 20 years.
Yeesh.
And so having a technical area that you're strong in, and the different accreditation bodies have applications that you can download. And so gather your training records because you have to show evidence of training in those areas where you can. And then you self-assess. You say, I have no knowledge in this area. I have working knowledge, or I'm an expert in an area. And so you self-assess and then you back it up with records. And with the assessing, you know, if you've been on the receiving end of assessments, that helps because then you know how the assessment goes. Um, if you've had experience in responding to corrective actions or even writing deficiency or identifying non-conforming work for a corrective action, that learning the nuances of citing the objective evidence, what the deficiency is, and what the requirement is, because a saying amongst assessors is if you can't cite it, you can't write it, which means you have to have a citable requirement in order to cite a deficiency. It can't be my opinion. Okay, what's your opinion based on? And I've
Right.
been in assessments where I was just hammered
I
with
was going to say
opinions.
there are some assessments and assessors I've
Mhm.
heard of. I hear a lot of the horror stories, obviously, but
Mhm.
We all do. And then
Yeah.
one of the other fun ones is it's a should. You can't write me up on a should. But
You can
you're
you can
not
write, yeah,
doing this.
yeah. It may be an opportunity for improvement, but it's not a clear deficiency.
No,
And
and that's
yeah.
where some standards even have that. Like the box should be 10 inches. I think one of them had like that should be 10 inches. And but
Mhm.
no plus or minus. So that
Mhm.
means, if we're doing that, that should be 10 inches nominal, and nothing is 10 inches nominal.
Mm-mm. And
Nothing.
there is for test labs, here's an interesting document that hasn't been shared a lot, is there is a operational document from IEC that is called the Collection of Test Lab Decisions. It's an operational document. I think it's OD 5014. And what that does is it gives you a list of equipment accuracy specifications where a method may not specify them. So yeah, Henry, if you can follow it, if you can find it, that would be great.
When I'll link it on
Yeah,
the YouTube
Yeah, I
episode.
started looking for that because there's some other ones that I found
yeah,
lately.
yep.
Some of those up. But as we
And
do that,
and
so
I always
yeah,
tell
Ryan.
people like it's one of those things, people are like, hey, I don't necessarily want to leave my job, but I'd like to do other things. It's like become a part of committees, be an assessor, and
Mhm,
the assessment, be an assessor on its own, that at least is not volunteer. So
mhm,
you can make some income on that. Do you mind
mhm,
talking about that? Like what is some of the pacing on those? I haven't been an
mhm,
assessor. I got
mhm.
asked right before I'd started the school and then I'm
Yeah,
caught up. So
yeah.
what kind of time commitment is it? Is it really hectic? What's it like?
It depends on the length of the assessment, which is based on the length or the size of the accreditation scope, um, and as well as the measurement area. Is it calibration? Is it testing? And if it's testing, is it chemistry, microbiology, or mechanical testing? And um, are you working alone or are you working with team assessors? Because sometimes you do an assessment on your own. So there may be travel time that's associated with it. There's preparation
Hmm.
where you have to prepare the agenda. You've got to review the quality system documents and other records so that when you go into the assessment, you have an idea of what they're doing and what it is you want to look at. And communicating with the lab before the assessment to schedule it and make sure you have all the records. Who are the people you need to witness? Reviewing the previous assessment. What deficiencies, if any, were there in a previous assessment that you have to make sure are addressed?
Hmm.
And then there's the actual on-site assessment time. And sometimes in the evening, you're looking at stuff in the hotel. So it's pretty intensive weeks during the assessment. And at the end, you prepare your reports. So you issue the report to the client to say, here are the deficiencies, if there are any. And if they wanted written observations, which are opportunities for improvement or areas where there isn't a defined deficiency, but there's the potential that, hey, if it keeps going this way, this was a one-off, but there's a potential
Mm.
this could become systemic. Um, and looking at those or writing those reports, as well as then submitting your receipts, doing your expense report with the accreditation body. And then after the assessment, if there are deficiencies that the accreditation officer needs technical help with, they'll reach out to the assessor and say, okay, the lab has responded. Please review these responses. Does this satisfy the deficiency? And sometimes there's a lot of back and forth. And when I'm having to follow up more than once with the lab on the same thing, it's like, hey, let's have a video call
Yeah.
because there's something, a lot of times it's just written word back and forth,
Yeah.
and a discussion, sharing screens, doing interpretive dance can help really clarify
Yeah.
and answer
Morse code,
questions. Morse
something,
code.
anything
Yeah.
that can get it through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure
It
because, no lab likes deficiencies, and so I always think of it as like, whenever I was a part of an assessment where I was being assessed, I always try and be extra nice because I know sometimes it does get heated and I understand why it does, but
Mhm.
there really needs to be like, um, I don't think sometimes people understand how bad things are out there in the civilian, but no, I should say in all calibration communities. I'm not even going to say in third party cal. Like I go to plenty of government contracting that is a mess.
Mm.
So having that assessor, I would put a word out there if you could to be less combative and maybe accepting and viewing these things as true opportunities. Now, obviously, if you feel like you have one of those bad assessors, what do you do? I was going to ask that. What happens if you do have a bad assessor, or the
Mhm.
quote unquote bad assessor?
Mhm.
What is a lab's recourse on something like that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So the lab can reach out to their contact person at the accreditation body and say, look, I've been trying to work with this assessor. There are these issues. Be clear about what the issues are. And hopefully you've already addressed it with the assessor and said, hey, something's not working here. And sometimes it's just not a good match. It's
Mhm.
rare. Um, Most of the assessments I'm on, I'll, how is this, how has your experience been with this accreditation body over the years? And they're like, oh, it's been really good. We had one assessor in 1992 and that was horrible and did X, Y, and Z. But for the most part, um, there's good assessors out there. And it also is important for the assessor to set the tone in the opening meeting
Mm. Mhm.
to say,
Mhm.
hey, we appreciate your time, we appreciate your business, we realize this is an interruption to your business. You have a lot of other things going on that you still have to deal with. So realizing that this is a sampling exercise, we're going to be, pulling some different records and to try to get an essence of how things are run. We're not going to be able to see everything, and what I may see may be different than a different assessor. And I'm coming in with the expectation that there are zero deficiencies, that you are in complete conformance with your own requirements, with the accreditation body requirements, and with the requirements of 17025, for example. And we're going to review the objective evidence. And whenever there's a question about something I'm seeing and the potential for a deficiency, we'll pause. I'll bring it up because maybe there's other records you can show me and other evidence you can provide, and maybe an interpretation that
Mhm.
how you interpret it is maybe different than how I'm interpreting it. But
Sure.
how you're interpreting it is just as valid. It's just as valid, and I've learned. So sometimes I might be like, oh well, this might be a deficiency, but let's talk about this. How are you applying this? What else have you looked at in it? And sometimes it's like, yeah, you know what? You're meeting the intent, and I've learned, and thank you. So it's a conversation, and also letting them know because I'm coming in, I'm a fresh set of eyes, and sometimes I can see things that you can't because you're seeing it every day.
Mhm.
And I know that from my own lab that I was,
Mhm.
Mhm.
couldn't see the
Mhm.
forest for the trees. So we're here to help you on your continuous improvement journey. And we want to be that partner for you. And I'm your assessor for the next 2 years. And, I want us to have, if anybody could say, I want to have fun in the assessment. And I had one president come into the closing meeting. He says, I have never heard so much laughing during an assessment. And
See, that's
yeah,
awesome, though. I think
yeah.
that's a testament to you, Heather.
Oh,
Like
thanks.
Everybody should
the
do
the
that.
things that you're talking about, I think it's great for those that are assessors to hear it too, because you know there is. I think we can all agree there's multiple ways we can go about this
Mhm,
process that we all have to do, right?
mhm,
And if we all have the same goal and intent and work together towards it, I think it's
mhm.
a better
Yeah,
situation there.
Let's
thank you.
be fair though, not
Mhm,
not everybody has the same personality type. And
No.
there are a lot of analytical people that are going to just come in and read over everything
mhm,
and just be there and not make it fun. But you're hoping that they
mhm.
pull and either way, you're hoping that they pull and make things better.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we haven't had. I think there's only been we've been fortunate that the super analytical people that I know are like Dilla, Klaus, and Harry, all great
Mhm,
people.
Hmm.
And that Harry, so talk about assessments. The one night I went, Harry Moody comes in and I go, "Do you want to go to dinner?" And he said, "Sure, I'd love to go to dinner." We went to dinner, talked for an hour and a half, 2 hours. This
yeah.
is another thing that for people listening here, um, things that they can do. Now, sometimes assessors have to, some say, no, I have all this work, I want to get through and get your stuff
Mhm,
done. But sometimes they'll say yes. And during that time, he's like, he told me, he said, hardly any of my clients ever take me out to, and I was floored. This guy has like 50 some years of experience and
mhm,
knowledge. Why wouldn't you want to go to dinner and talk to him? It was just
mhm.
silly to me. But yeah, if you can you say some of the, like, a perfect, there's no lab's perfect, but a lab that where you go in and just for your assessment, is it being receiving of feedback? Is it wanting to work, wanting to be better? Is it having everything organized? Because that's another piece of it.
Hmm.
If they have files all over the place and nothing's in line or organized, and
Hmm.
you feel like you're playing that choose your own adventure, right? You remember those reading books and go to go to page 54. Oh, I didn't want to go to page 54. Let me see what happens if I go to 36. But yeah, can you
Hmm.
describe some of that for people like that, give them some value, like what they should do that maybe can help other
Hmm.
assessors too,
Yeah.
um, when they go into places?
Well, as an assessor, part of what we do too is our document review before the
Hmm.
assessment. So we review the documents and we let the lab know, hey, there may be some areas of concern. Here are the areas of concern. Here's the related requirements. So we will talk about this during the assessment. Please have these other records available during the assessment. So like training records and your supplier review. So some of the and management review. And so some of these things we want to look at beforehand, and then others that look at during the assessment. And during COVID, this really highlighted where people had electronic based systems versus paper based, and they're literally holding paper up to the camera on the screen, and you're looking at it trying to read it, and oh my goodness, the neck and eye strain. Woo. Um, but most importantly, to be open and receptive, for the labs to be open and receptive to the assessor, that we're here to do a job. We don't have a vendetta against anybody. We truly want you to have a good assessment. And I have to laugh because, and I'm just going to do a little segue. I was a volleyball official, collegiate volleyball and high school volleyball official for a number of years. And with that, you don't want to be the focus of the match. You explain the rules, you go through the coin toss, you talk about the um, out of bounds areas so that both teams understand the rules and understand the limits in the game and how you're going to run things. And so when people know what's expected of them, then they can go on and do their job, whether it's on the court or in the lab. And so assessing is a lot like that. I'm kind of a referee, and I'm welcome to have conversations with people to say, "Hey, I'm not sure about this," or "I'm why, how how is this clause interpreted? How are you interpreting it?" So a lot of what I do in assessments and have a lot of feedback from labs is like, "Oh, thank you for explaining the requirement and what it means and why we didn't meet it," as opposed to, "I looked at this evidence and it's a deficiency, period." And they're like, "Okay, how do we address it?" It's like, "Well, I can't tell you how to address it, but this is the requirement, and as it's interpreted, how what the evidence that I'm looking at doesn't meet it. And it's because it's missing this, or some things are so clear. You're reporting uncertainty to more than two significant digits on an accredited CalCert. Here's the specific requirement that it's from. So I will show them the requirement. And then they have a much better sense of, oh, this isn't just some random thing that the assessor is making up. I understand why. The other thing that happens too is, well, this was fine in the previous assessments, or no other assessor has ever cited this before.
The
And
classic.
classic one, this has been fine with every other assessor. And it's like, um, I wasn't here in the previous assessments, and here's what I do know might be different. The requirements have evolved, and there are changes to the requirements, and that sometimes will um, create a deficiency if you haven't kept up with the requirements. And sometimes not keeping up on the requirements can cascade to a whole bunch of deficiencies that didn't need to be there. And um, and I will be able to point that out to them in the assessment of like, hey, you didn't control your external documents, so you weren't reviewing your accreditation requirements, and because of that, you don't have these records that meet the requirements. And
Do you find
of
that
course,
this is
yeah.
in some ways, and I'm not, this is very generalized, but
Mhm.
are you seeing it because a lot of we have shortage on technicians. Is there shortage on quality people also that
Mhm.
you're having like labs just don't have the internal resources that they might need, right? I
Yeah.
mean, is that
Yeah.
kind of what's happening out there?
A lot of labs, and this is something, Ryan, that you touched on in the beginning, is just
Yep.
the shortage of people
Mm.
in so many areas. So, and how quality and calibration are often looked at as necessary evils. They're
Hmm.
coming in to tell us we're doing our job wrong, or they're doing this. I can't tell any difference in the equipment, but it goes to the lab, some magic happens, and it comes back with a new sticker. I don't really understand what they're doing. They just keep taking my equipment when I need it. Um, and
Yeah. And I need that because I want
yeah,
management wants me to run this X number of things on this next shift, and I can't do it without that equipment.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah. I got that pushback because I ran an internal Cal lab
Yep.
servicing all of the different
Yep.
test labs.
Oh,
And
I
they're like,
know.
you're just a cost center. And I said, no, I'm a revenue saving center because
Wow.
here is what I save you. Here's what this lab saves you because we are doing 90% of our own calibrations. One, if we were to outsource it all, it'd be over $1 million a year. Our outsource budget is 100,000. So we're already saving you that money right there. We have the agility to be able to respond to something in the moment. Hey, somebody move this balance and now it's all wacky and we have these jobs to do. Can you come calibrate it? If we outsourced it, we'd have to call the company, lock out the balance,
Hmm. Yeah.
interrupt production.
And when
And
they could get in too.
when they could get in, as well
Yeah.
as we can calibrate it to how it's used versus just, the stock calibration that you might get from a vendor that might not meet your needs.
Yep.
And so there were a lot of things that we could do. And I would say if you need to outsource if you wanted to just send it all out, one, you're going to need more people because that's going to take a lot more time to manage. So you've increased labor costs, you've increased the cost of sending it all out, and slowed down your agility. And so this is what we're saving you. This is the revenue you don't have to generate to pay for it.
I know I
And
need to do a documentary just on places I've seen
yeah.
in person that they've lost millions of dollars because something was done incorrectly, and it's something so simple like pressure gauge
Hmm.
wrong, calibrated to the wrong units, and you're like,
Hmm.
if you just would have the right people, or you handle it correctly, this whole thing would be saved with it's just
Yeah.
something so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The BP refinery is the biggest one. $2 billion. Well, there's a lot of them, but $2 billion because of
Hmm.
the a gauge was malfunctioning, the pressure was rising. Said things was when it was at, I think it was actually falling and said it was rising. So they had like a 1975 or something
Mm.
misstated calibration sheet, and it was cost cutting. They just did, it's worked. It's I
Hmm.
think Petrosky says it what that people get complacent and during some synopsis of what he's saying.
Mm.
Prolonged success breeds complacency.
Hmm.
And then people drop their guard. Hey, 20 years we haven't had an incident. Why are we
Hmm.
calibrating this stuff now? Why are we doing this?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
31, I think the BP one, 31 years after that 1975 data sheet that that instrument's probably not
Mm.
working anymore is,
Mm-mm.
that's now you have $2 billion
Yeah.
for something that would have probably cost you what, $500 every other year or something like that.
Hmm.
Well, even cheaper way back in the 70s, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's crazy. If we
Yeah.
could, Ryan was talking about this and training because this is another topic that I think the community needs to address.
Mm.
NCSLI is trying to address it, ASQ is
Hmm.
trying to address it, but at some point, we got to invest in people, processes, and automations coming
Hmm.
because if we look at the economic conditions, it basically says this year should relatively, I don't want to put a jinx on anybody, but this year should relatively be flat. And then the way it's looking is we're going to ramp up, and the demand for calibration and all this equipment is going to be there till about 28, 29 is probably
Hmm.
when it's going to slow again.
Mm.
So, and companies just aren't investing in the resources. You're not going to get, you're going to have to invest in training programs, right?
Yeah.
Because military's not producing
Mm-mm.
a bunch of people. They're anybody that's going to school for metrology. Very few schools offer it. they're
Hmm.
being, the 100% of those classes, I think, every time I talk to one of those schools, they're all taken.
Hmm.
So someone somewhere, I mean, we have it, and we've been keep refining it. You're going to have to develop your own method to train technicians because you're not going to
Hmm.
be able to go pluck them out of anywhere. You're going
Hmm.
to have that quality system. You're going
Hmm.
to have the documentation. You're going to have the continuous learning. You're going to have to really have, like, how do we find and hire somebody? Because training
Hmm.
somebody is expensive,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have some kind of assessment test, like, hey, I want the skill set, I want a cultural fit, I want
Hmm.
somebody with attention to detail, because I've yet to see a Caltech that is aloof and has, zero attention to detail be
Mm.
successful in their
Yeah.
field,
Yeah.
No,
right? I mean,
they'll
so
get
there's
phased out.
criteria that you have that I've said numerous times on this, the criteria that you have to have, but people really need to start thinking about what are we going to do? Because it's not,
Hmm.
um, you're not going to go out there, or I'm going to buy automated equipment because the super skilled people are going to be super expensive and in high demand, and there's not enough of them to fill
Hmm.
all of the jobs that
Yeah.
that are going to be out there.
Yeah. And
The
that's,
problem.
yeah, it is. It's been a growing problem in CSL, and ASQ looked at it 20 years ago because even at that time in the United
What's the problem?
States, the Standard Occupation Classification Handbook didn't have a standalone
Mm-mm.
position description for calibration. It was rolled under engineering technician. It was rolled under all
Mhm.
these other things. So it was a 20-year labor, and Chris Gratchinen was the main driver of doing a lot of the work to gather the resources, to gather the information and the data, to say, after it was declined the first time, and they said there just isn't enough evidence that there is a need, that there are those positions open. And so Chris did a search of quantifying how many companies are out there that are commercial calibration, just accredited, and then how many open positions are there. And the one that stands out to me is the comparison against number of nail technicians in the United States, that there's more open positions in calibration than there are total of nail techs. I may have that
Right. But yeah,
somewhat
yeah.
close to that, but it's that's the, like, people know, okay, yeah, there's a lot of nail technicians, nail salons, um, that's a standalone job. And but for calibration work, we one thing that's against us is we like working in the background. We like just making sure things work and doing it not to a lot of fanfare. And as long as things go well, we're happy. Management's happy, we're happy. But when things go awry, and I know, Henry, you gave the presentation last year at the ASQ
Yeah.
Measurement
Yep.
Quality Division about measurements gone wrong. I've done one too for Nerd Night, and have the video on my website of good and bad moments in measurement history and the importance of it. And we take it for granted until something goes wrong. And
Yep.
sometimes there's spectacular things, but sometimes it could be a medication dosage was wrong. That, you know, it, those aren't the stories that necessarily happen. But for example, in with quality, the compounding pharmacy that was making these pain injections that were then, at least in Michigan, 13 people died because these were injected into their spine, and then there was a fungus in it. They got infected, and many of them died, and some people didn't, but had horrible side effects from it.
Yeah.
And that's a quality issue.
Yep. And it happens. People
Yeah.
just do not realize how frequently these things, or how
Yeah.
frequently near misses happen, is what they don't really
Hmm.
realize, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're part of the near miss. If you're
Hmm.
on the airplane with the engine on fire, that's a
Yeah.
near miss, right?
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to be pretty damn worried when you're up there and you look out the window and the engine's smoking and on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I've
Whereas,
your son's car, that
well,
the
oh yeah, the wheel that came
mechanic
off,
didn't,
yeah, that
yeah,
was
that
crazy.
didn't tighten the wheel enough.
And we have more and more people that just aren't paying attention. I mean, we can debate all day long what it is, phones and everything else, but they're just not paying attention. The quality of work is definitely, some people are going to say it's gone up. Other people are going to say it's gone down. I'm going to say, I don't know where it is, but I certainly feel like when you walk into places, I think the service isn't what it used to be, and I do think people are generally not as engaged in their work at a lot of places, and that includes some of these. Obviously, it includes companies making measurements,
Yeah.
right? I
Well,
mean, and that's one thing that we often don't talk. You can go in and assess, and Heather, I know you've seen it, right? You go in and assess everything. The company's got all the documentation, right? But if their people are not engaged, my gosh, that's a headache waiting to happen. Well, think about the person in shipping that's just packing stuff. If they're not
Mm-hmm.
engaged, they're making sure things are going. How much damage is happening on
Mm-hmm.
the way out?
Mm-hmm.
So I
yeah, it's one of
know
the few industries we're in that, like I was saying, the people involved actually have to care. And you're right. I think there's a general dissolving of that care towards any work. It's a cultural thing right now. There's a
yeah,
lot of anger in the workforce, and it has nothing to do with Cal or
nope.
metrology as a whole. It's more of the feeling towards work and employers, and so it
Mm-hmm.
gets scarier when it's, we have to care or lives are at stake, as we have
Mm-hmm.
been mentioning, but
And those companies need to care too. The people that are
Mm-hmm.
employing, the people that, oh, you're just used.
Absolutely.
How good do you think you feel when you're like, oh, you're this division? You hear constantly from the CEO, this division just sucks all this money and it's not,
Mm-hmm.
useful,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? They don't have the mentality. Like Heather phrased it 100% right. You don't have the mentality. You realize we saved you $5 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So many people let waste happen. I guess the who wrote Agile Manufacturing, it has Heather probably knows Agile Six Sigma, the Agile process book. I had it somewhere. I was just reading it, but they're still citing like 30 to 40% of defects that people just live with, right? And they just say,
Mm-hmm.
I just ran it. Can we fix it? Can we rework it? Can we do this? And it's crazy that they don't fix
Mm-hmm.
the problem or that
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to fix it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a measurement thing, or sometimes it's somebody on a machine just trying to keep tweaking things, the nation of tweakers that we are, and stay and instead
Hmm.
of getting that stable process. I won't go on that, but I did want to say one.
It's
I
a
did want to
whole
go. Yeah, that one's another one. That's a whole other thing. But I had something because I was writing it the other day, and this one of our guys told me this, and I said if my guidance counselor had told me there was this cool profession where all you needed was to have attention to detail and be good at math, I would have paid more attention in school. And that's from one of our lab techs,
Mm-hmm.
and he said it to me more than once, and I finally wrote it down, and I was like, this is one of those ones that Ryan started with this. Is a metrology career right for you? And that might be something that people are out
Yeah.
there listening, like,
Yeah.
or if you want to go into quality, if you love reading documents, right? And you missed the vote on being a lawyer or an attorney, maybe you want to be a
where you don't want to go
Do you,
through the
yeah.
schooling for it. Like, ugh,
Do you
who wants
like
to be a lawyer?
tinkering? Do you like
yeah,
figuring out how things work?
yeah.
I don't even remember this, but my mom said she came in and I had the vacuum sweeper apart and I had a screwdriver in my hand. I'm like, I want to see how it worked. And they had to put on the little things on the plugs on the walls because I would just keep plugging things in there. So they had to put thing in that you'd have to turn it to be able to plug anything. Because I'm like, how does this work? How does this work? My
Hmm.
back tire blew on my bicycle. It was a single speed. So I took the wheel off. I replaced the tire. I had all the bolts in a cup. I put it back together and I still had bolts left over and got on the bike and rode it. It rode fine. I'm like, okay. I don't know what I was 9. But having a curiosity, and when people would bring me stuff that broke in the lab, I'm like, well, I probably can't break it anymore. Let me see if I could fix it. And
Yeah.
then that
See, there
fearlessness.
we need ads for the whole industry, not just any company. And it'd be like,
Mhm.
someone taking something apart as a kid and it's like, is this you or your kid? Contact
Mhm.
us
Yeah.
because
Right.
we can develop them.
Yeah.
And we need guidance counselors should know about this too, because so many people, maybe they don't want to go to
Hmm.
college, but they can get
Hmm.
into. You were talking about the other thing. You go to these ASQ meetings. I know a lot
Hmm.
of people are timid, but that's one of the biggest things. Like
Hmm.
get away from being timid. Go approach somebody. Chances are the majority of people that are in metrology will sit down and help you out. If you
Yeah.
approach them at a ASQ event or anywhere else, you could have a half an hour talk and get guidance.
Hmm.
People in your company, right? If you have a quality manager in your company and you show interest, that quality manager, he or she should be able to help you. Like,
Hmm.
the management should support like you
Yeah.
learning more about that, because
Yeah.
maybe a junior quality position opens up, and then maybe that person retires and you can become a
Yeah.
quality manager. Or
Hmm.
if the company's really a great company, they will know what's in your best interest and know that they will train you to go somewhere else. Maybe they train you
Yeah.
to go to a vendor where you can make a huge difference for them to get the stuff on
Hmm.
time and better quality, and it's a win-win. Look for
Yeah.
wins. All good companies will look for wins
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. And the company culture is a big thing too. And I know that's something
Oh,
that's a
it's huge.
focus for you, Henry,
Oh yeah.
of encouraging your staff. And there's that saying of, but what if we train them and they leave? It's like, what if you don't train them and they stay?
They
Or
say,
someone
how
else will
bad is
offer to
that?
trade them, like that's what I'll see a lot is they're like, well, we don't want them. Well, this gets into a whole other thing too, like showing job listings. And it's like, well, I don't want to train them and them see job listings. I'm like, do you think they're not capable of finding these things on their own?
Hmm.
Like, if they're
Hmm.
gonna leave,
Yeah.
they're gonna leave. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's one of the worst things you ever look at a job listing, because you on the management side, you know what you see people post a job listing, and I just saw one the other day. Qualified Caltech, 17 to or no, it said 19 to $21 an hour. And you post that somewhere, that's going to get ripped to shreds. And
Hmm.
I'm like, that's part of our competition over there that's doing that. We're way higher. How can you start competing? And then there's people even
Hmm.
higher yet and higher yet. You get into pharmacy, or
Hmm.
what pharmaceuticals, right? It just depends on where you are and what your
Hmm.
niche is. But
Yep.
the if you can find that, and everybody thinks it's always greener on the other side too. That's the one of our current employees took a job that it was a little funny. He took a job, and I went out. I said, I think this is what you're going to run into. And he came back a week later. He said, is your job still open? It's not worth me being here. They wanted to falsify stuff. They wanted him to do
Oh.
this. The guy that he came in, he was going to be another person to help this other guy out. Was so happy to see him. That guy hadn't been home for Christmas. He like slept at his desk. They were just working him to death. So you run into this stuff,
Hmm.
and you really have to evaluate like everything, like as like what company is going to help me grow, right?
Hmm.
If you want to be, what company is going to help me grow, and when I outgrow that company, they should be fine for me to go on to do somewhere else.
Hmm.
It's a little bit different than job hoppers, right?
Hmm.
It's companies investing in somebody, and they're grateful for it, and they've outgrown the company, which is different than the people. And I don't think anybody should hire the people that are just trying to always go somewhere better for the money, because
Hmm.
eventually they're not going to be uh, engaged
Hmm.
in the workforce. They're just going
Yeah.
to be like, hey, I'm just going to be here to pad my resume
Yeah,
and
they're
go elsewhere.
marking time basically.
Hmm. Yep.
Hmm. And that's a tough one, because they're going to keep doing that. And then how good of a metrologist are they going to be
Well,
if
and
they do
the
that?
sadder part, Henry, is that the third party or a lot of these labs they need them, and so that's who ends up showing up.
Well,
Hmm.
that's why I say you got to have a good training program. You got to
Hmm.
have it. You're going to have to train almost every company is going
Hmm.
to have some kind of internal training, mentorship, whatever. Get the good metrologists that are out there, get one and develop your quality system, develop everything else, and
Hmm.
develop your training so you can breed from that one person, you can have a
Hmm.
team of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, have that be
Yeah.
their focus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for education, like at Sign Calibration School,
Yep.
at those different conferences and networking. Um, my thing was to find who the gurus were in when I started, because I didn't have a background in calibration, but I had to get up to speed because I had to run this lab. I was the only person. And luckily had an assessor say, you need to go to MSc and NCSLI and join ASQ. I'm like, that's a lot of letters. And
a lot of acronyms there. I know I
right.
left the military and then they start throwing them to me out here, and I'm like, what is this? Well, Heather,
What are
we
these new ones?
unfortunately are close to the end of our time. We always like
Yeah.
to ask a light question at the end.
Okay.
So who's the worst lab out there right now? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Who's the worst
um,
lab out
my neighbor's
Who's the
my
worst
neighbor's
accreditation body? No, I'm
my
just kidding.
neighbor's black lab. My neighbor's black lab just yeah,
is the worst one?
he just wanders everywhere. I'd say a meth lab is the worst.
There
A
you go.
meth lab
There we
is the
go.
worst?
No, so one
Why?
that I'd like to,
Are they making, if they're good meth lab, they're making good measurements that are scientifically
they
sound.
better.
There you go. Yeah.
Why don't they have assessments?
So the fun one I like to ask, what is the weirdest thing you've calibrated or seen calibrated since you have a lot of assessing experience? Howard Zion recently brought up a wobulator, which I just love bringing that one up because
Uh-huh.
that's just crazy sounding. Is there any weird calibrations you've
Oh
seen over
yeah.
your years?
Yeah, I had to calibrate a bed of nails and a set of stairs.
Sweet. A bed of
Yeah,
Whoa,
nails. Did
like
you
a
lay
bed
on
of
it? Did you
nails.
test
like the
it?
length of each nail?
It was for toy testing, so
Oh,
ASTM 960
Oh.
F96 963, and it was for flammability of toys that you had to have so much airflow underneath the toy that would be sitting on top of the bed of nails. Because they brought it to me and they're like, calibrate this. One of those things. I'm like, what is this? And they gave me the spec. I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand this. And then the stairway was also for toy testing. So to simulate somebody taking a toy and pushing it down a flight of stairs. And yeah, they had to have a certain rise and run and so many steps.
That is so cool.
Um,
See,
it
it
I
was
love
is.
a
I
asking
thought the
that
bed of
question.
nails was going to be the one that, people used to lay on.
Yeah,
yeah.
because if one was way a little too
Gimmicky.
long, it's gonna
Yeah,
pierce.
like this is actually gonna pierce something here. We need to
Yeah, you
make
get
sure the
acupuncture.
flatness of we need to make sure the flatness of each nail is X. So when people lay down.
Yeah, there was a mannequin, another one I've seen a lot. There was a mannequin that was to simulate an 18-pound toddler that would trigger a pool alarm test back when
Hmm.
the standard required that the pool alarm if somebody fell into the pool. So we had to saw the arm off of this mannequin to add lead shot to bring it up to 18 pounds. And then it was retired and it sat in our lab. And it was just one of those Christmas ones. So you see this little cherub with its hands like this. So we put a ball cap on it. We put sunglasses on it. We put playing cards in its hand, and it was a card shark. I mean, we would do crazy, yeah, all
And now
fun
it
It
had
things.
lead
became
in
its
it.
own
So
character,
no, no,
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
it did.
OSHA comes in with the lead in the mannequin. And I mean, we
What
used to
are
play
these
with lead.
balls?
We used to
Hmm.
play with lead. We used to play with mercury and all
Yeah.
that. But yeah,
Oh
it
yeah.
is not good. It is
No.
Boy
definitely not
Scouts, we
good.
used to learn how to pack the small rounds.
No, lead
Oh
shot.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and some shotgun shells I think we did at some point. It's been a few
Wow.
years. Well, Heather,
Yeah.
you said I echo what you said about Henry and his contributions.
Mhm.
Henry, I always say is amazing. Heather, I also want to thank you for everything that you do for the community,
Oh,
both quality side, calibration side. So, thank you
All of it.
for that. Well, yeah,
thank
everything.
you.
Yeah, and
Presentations
of coming
beyond
on
the
the show.
beyond the sticker.
Yeah.
Heather's just a cat. If you have a chance to go see Heather, she's an absolute captivating speaker. She has worked on it. She doesn't turn her back on you and talk and read the slides. That was a good one. At ASQ, she did a presentation on that. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say hi to Grandpa Shaw. So because when this comes out,
Yeah,
Grandpa Shaw is
that's right. It was
yeah,
yeah. Oh my
today.
goodness, still up
Today.
as a grandpa.
Well,
That
Oh
is
maybe
so
not
wow, I
yet,
didn't
but by
know.
the
yeah,
time
it was
this
due
is out, he's
yesterday. Yeah.
Well,
and
congratulations.
being
That's
induced today. So
okay.
Grandpa Shaw,
Oh, that's
today or
fantastic.
tomorrow, it could go. So
That's so
congratulations.
fantastic.
And when this
Oh, so
comes out,
exciting.
he will already have it. So everybody
Yep.
can call. Uh,
Congratulations,
change
Paul.
Dillup's
Yeah.
name to Grandpa Shaw when you see Dillup anywhere.
Well, Heather,
And Ron, yeah,
how do people
yeah,
get a hold of you if they
yeah.
want, or do you want people to get a hold of you? How
Sure.
we can
Yeah. Um,
hide you if needed.
I have a lot of resources on my website, which is heatherwadegroup.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can look me up there. I have a link to my website there. I'm also one of the admins for the ASQ Measurement Quality Division page on LinkedIn that we just created. So that's going to be a good way to find out a lot of information about the MQD conference. But I'll be at the A2LA conference in April. I'll be at NCSL International Conference in July. Dilip and I are co-chairing the tutorial program. Um, I'll be at the MQD conference in September. I'll be at the audit conference in October. Oh, in May, I'll be at the ASQ World Conference.
Also in
The
Denver,
Beyond,
right?
also in Denver.
Yeah,
Denver's
Denver's
busy
Oh no,
this
popping
I'm
year.
this
sorry.
year.
No, that's San Diego. I'm sorry.
That's
That one's
San
in
Oh,
San
Diego.
Diego.
Yeah,
oh,
there's
I must
one
have been
Um,
in
seeing a different one.
I guess you're not going, there's another one that's in Nashville, like May
Oh,
2nd.
the Southern Quality Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quality show. Yep, not going to be able to make that one. Did the quality show in Chicago last fall. Um, the
Also, go
Beyond the
out and
Sticker
buy
and
the
the
book.
Cert. Yeah, you get the book. I've got it on my website. If you
Yep,
order it from
signed.
me, I'll
You
sign it, sign
Students,
it
still
and
this
signed.
inscribe it.
is slowly getting integrated into the school as a reference. So
Yeah,
future things will be referencing this. So get it. It's a good
yeah,
reference.
yeah. And then watch on NCSL International in April 10th, I think it is. I'll be giving the webinar for Beyond the Sticker and the Cert.
And
So,
that's going to be free, I believe. That's
mhm,
Metrology in Motion. So
yep,
anybody that's listening, write
yep,
that down. That's a
yep.
really good, a fantastic presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be at ESCO in May as well, doing some training. I think the same time you're out there, Ryan.
Yeah, come out and see us.
Yeah, yeah.
Heather needs a tour shirt, like
Super party. Oh
to
yeah,
sell.
a sign shirt.
I've
You're
got
saying?
I've got
No, a
some great.
tour. Well, if you want to make it a signed shirt, but it's going to have the dates and locations of everything, the Heather
Oh
Wade
Oh,
tour,
that's
yeah,
right. Oh
or the
yeah,
Heather
Miss
we should
Wade
do
Wade
group
tour.
tour
Or
shirt.
tour.
no,
The Miss Wade.
we'll just call it the Miss Wade tour.
Love it.
So Ryan, kudos and thank you for all you
Thank
do
you for
with your
coming on.
school and helping in these podcasts. I really appreciate being a part of it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Henry, again for being my host and helping me this season. And thank you all for listening.